And we are here this morning. I think Tim will be walking in the door at any time. He is our volunteer this morning, so super grateful for him. We continue our practice again this year doing Trevor Hudson's book, 40 Words for 40 Days, Pauses for Lent. So again, this is just kind of the ashes that symbolize Ash Wednesday. We began this practice after Ash Wednesday last year and continued doing so this year. Some folks mentioned it was a good practice, and some folks mentioned that they enjoyed. I think Candy really watches this at home. She's somebody who I know is not able to be with us in service a lot just because of transportation, and I enjoy seeing her on with us. Let's see who just popped up on our live feed. So I know that some homebound members and some folks that are not always able to worship with us here in the congregation are able to do their Lenten practice with us at home, and this has been helpful for them. So we have continued to do this online, and I don't do every day online. But I kind of try to post something every day through the 40 days of Lent. I'm going to reach out to some other folks and see if they want to participate with me, so maybe you will get some other voices. But the word today is see. It comes from John 9, verse 25. The verse says, though I was blind, now I see. Again, that's John 9:25. I will read from Trevor Hudson's book today. He writes, we desire to see and to be seen. How often we have said to be absent loved ones. It would be so good to see you again. We also want others to see our presence. Feeling unnoticed or ignored can be very painful. An elderly person expressed her pain to me. People walk past me as though I am invisible. Christian faith involves a new way of seeing. When Jesus becomes part of our lives, we see people and things more clearly in our world. John Newton, the converted slave owner and hymn writer, describes his inner transformation in these words: was blind, but now I see. God's grace opens a blind eye so that they might see with the eyes of Christ. So let's reflect on our spiritual eyesight. Do our hurried lives make everything and everyone as a passing blur? It is time for our eyes to be touched by Christ. Make our eyes become more and more like His, eyes that can truly see others for who they are. And I think for me, this is an interesting way, working in the homeless shelter, the overflow shelter in Winston-Salem. A lot of those folks felt invisible. We kind of don't want to see those folks. What about invisible disabilities? What about, those folks that we just really don't want to see? Otherwise, we have to help them, right? What about addictions, and what about mental illness? Jesus became the marginalized, right, and lived among them. So what if our eyes really have to see those things that we want to not see? And how do we then, once we are transformed to a seeing people, what do we have to do once we see them? And how do we have to behave? And how does our ministry to those folks have to be different? And so for me, it really changed what I felt my calling was, and how I walked through the world, not just as a pastor, but as someone that saw humanity differently, that lived differently, that was touched differently, that purchased differently, that ate differently, that saw those in the hospitality industry differently, that was worried about if the server had health insurance, right? So, how do we walk through life seeing the other as one of us, right? And Janelle and I are music minister. For those of you that may end up watching this that are not part of our congregation, but Janelle and I always talk about she's going to play that song. I promise you, she's going to play that song for back in the 90s, What If God Was One of Us? And I think that Jesus came, God is one of us, right? Jesus is one of us for a reason. And so, though I was blind, now I see, takes on new meaning when we see Jesus as the other. And in our congregation, we've been going through a transformation and seeing those differences in one another and seeing Jesus as the other person. And what does that mean? So again, the daily practice that Trevor Hudson proposes for us. Look out your window today as God's creation. Let your eyes focus on something as beautiful. Now I say, I'm going to push back a little bit. Let your eyes focus on something that you might not find beautiful, and find it beautiful. Look at people you meet today that you might find challenging and see in their faces the beauty of God-given uniqueness. Find that person that you might find otherwise challenging and see what God sees in them as ultimately God-given creativity, ultimately God-given belovedness, and give thanks for them throughout the day for their beauty. Beloveds, have a great day, and I hope you find whatever spiritual practice works for you. Feel free to comment on here the things that you have found spiritually fulfilling or challenging during Lent. And I pray for you daily. Have a great day.